Tantoo Cardinal, welcome to Q.
Thank you so much.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm feeling chipper and ready to go at or come at or whatever we need to do here in the next couple of weeks.
But yeah, I was going to say I'm kind of talking to you before the storm hits. You
Yes.
know, before it all gets going. And you especially have a busy one. We're going to talk a little bit about your career. We're going to talk a little bit about your activism. But seeing as how we're about to hit the Toronto International Film Festival, there's so much excitement in the city right now, and you have 3 films in this festival.
Yes.
How's that?
Yeah. How is that?
Yeah.
Like when
Not how is that? How does it happen? But like, how are you feeling about it?
Well, it's I'm amazed. Yet in the same moment as I'm completely amazed, it feels like, well, yeah, it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
You know, this is almost 50 years of work now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited and horrifically grateful to
Horrifically grateful.
Yes, to be able to see a day like this, you know, a feature film, and a principal role in Grizzlies, and just a little visit in through Black Spruce. But to see our stories being brought forward in such a beautiful way. We've been making films for a very, very long time, and it's been extremely frustrating that the work of our storytellers is not really being seen by everybody.
Right,
You know, so
right.
wow, here's an opportunity for that to happen.
You're cool with the parties and all that. I have trouble with the parties and the red carpets and the.
And do you have trouble with that?
I think I do.
Do you?
I don't think I own enough.
Maybe
nice,
it's the shoes.
I don't own enough nice clothes to go to these parties. I'm a radio host. You know what I mean?
I know, and I'm not much of a clothes horse either.
No.
At all.
No.
You know, and I think a lot of times it was connected to, you know, self-image and all of this kind of stuff. Or on one hand, I'm a Leo and I'm an actor, and you got to be out there in the middle stage. But I'm also kind of Cancer, and you kind of want to hold back.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's why I hide out in this.
shy out
I
sometimes.
hide out in this radio studio. You know, it's
Yeah.
just enough. It's just enough. You know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But it's kind of fun getting dressed up.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
guess so.
I'm
yeah.
connecting it to my ancestors.
Yeah.
And
Right.
if anybody knows how to dress hot, my
Yeah.
ancestors know how to dress hot.
Right.
You know, so I'm kind of trying to emulate them a little bit, or, you know, give them a little sense of pride from where they can see from their catbird seat, you know, say, hey, see?
Doing pretty good
Honoring
down.
you,
Pretty
yeah.
good down here. Let's talk about the first film then. So you have your first starring role in a feature film at TIFF this year. It's called Falls Around Here. You play Mary Birchbark, who's a singer who returns to her reserve to reconnect with the land and her community. Am I on the right path here that this might be a character that you can relate to personally?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
The unfamiliarity of who we really are
Yeah.
is clothed. It's hidden behind fear or brainwashing or what. Why is it so hard for anybody that's not Indigenous to understand us or who we are and get a glimpse of our humanity, or, you know?
But even like you,
Why is that hard? Come on, tell me.
I mean, I think it's because we're not raised with the appropriate education. Like, you know, especially when I was coming up, I just, you know, it wasn't necessarily something I learned about. And it was only because I was in a choir. I was in a choir called the Shalloway Newfoundland and Labrador Youth Chorus, which was this thing they started after the Cod Moratorium in Newfoundland. I'm from Newfoundland. They started it after the Cod Moratorium, where they said these young people need to know more about their province than simply an industry. So we were brought out to reserves. They brought kids in from Labrador, and we all got to hang out with one another. And it's only because it wasn't accidental. It was only because it was intentional. And I think and there's only about 70 of us, and still I have like a trillion blind spots. I mean, more blind spots than I have sight. But if you don't have that, if you don't have someone intentionally making you do that, we don't necessarily live in a system that's going to help you with that.
Absolutely, and that's a good point too, because I wouldn't have these 3 films in this film festival right now had it not been intentional
Yeah.
on different people's parts
Yeah.
to make sure that we are getting to know each other. Peter Zosky did so much for educating the Canadian public and giving them some kind of an idea.
And Sheila Rogers.
And Sheila Rogers, well, she's after him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the people who do that in my industry, excuse me, and in my industry throughout, in the world of theater, people say, well, for example, when the Canadian content ruling came out, in the pride of telling a Canadian story was, okay, we'll get Indians to play Indian characters. Like, how about that? Isn't that? And you talk about reconciliation. It's been an entire process of reconciliation. Our whole existence has been about reconciliation. You know, there's my grandmother, taking care of these guys who came into the Air Force Base who were missing their families. And my grandfather was an Englishman who was a forest ranger. And so we had guests coming through. We were lonesome for their families. And so, my grandmother was doing that kind of reconciliation in those terms, welcoming her home. Oh, her home was open to anybody.
It's funny you mentioned that because I wanted to talk to you about Through Black Spruce, and I'm sure you've talked about it a lot, but it bears repeating for people listening to this right now. So it's based on a book by Joseph Boyden. Again, I don't have to remind you about any of this, but there were questions around his Indigenous identity, whether he should at all be telling Indigenous stories. Did that give you pause for whether to be involved in the film?
Well, I've kind of been a victim of that sort of attempted slander myself.
Is that so?
Yeah.
When?
Oh, back in the day, back in the 70s, or every once in a while, if somebody doesn't like your success, or you're on the air, or don't like statements you're making, or whatever. And so that it's almost like a handy place to attack your foundations. And I don't have a treaty number. I don't have a Métis number. My land was taken over by Tarsans. And so I sort of kind of get my back up on anybody who tries to judge. And ngapik squata kumsise ganehiwat. No, I don't. Because I know where I come from.
Right.
I come from my people. I come from the bush. I don't have a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to say that I'm a member of this or that or the other thing, but I defy anybody to talk to me about what right do I have to do anything that has to do with my world. Now, actually, I suppose it might not be my position to talk about it, but there's a couple of Boyden names back in the early in the early papers of Rupert's Land. So
when all this was going on, you had seen it all before. You didn't pay much. You didn't cause you too much concern.
It was really distasteful. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to talk about it because for me, I have a big heart and big empathy for people who don't know who they are, who don't know their roots. Look at that, the 60s scoop. And I had a sister who had to be given up to an adoption, and it took me till 2010 to find her.
Really?
Yes. So, if you don't know your relatives and you don't know all your roots, you know what? I have heart for you. I do. And so I couldn't get involved in that dogfight. I couldn't take a chunk out.
No.
You
I get it. I mean, but it's a cool, I mean, what I like about the conversation is that, with the conversation around even Don McKellar directing this thing, at least we're talking about it.
Yes, absolutely. And when Tina decided to do all that.
This is Tina Keeper. This is the producer.
Tina Keeper. Yeah, she's a dear friend of mine. I consider her a sister, my star sister. But these are people that she grew up with in the industry. She chose these people to produce this movie with.
Right.
They didn't say, "Okay, Tina, be our token Indian because we want to do this thing." No.
Yeah.
She hired them. And she ran that ship.
Yeah.
So if anybody's got any doubts about that, that's on their own, you know.
I'm curious, what guides you creatively? Like, what do you need to take a role?
I need a sense of yes from within my own tuitions.
Something deep within.
Yeah. And for a long time, it was a case of work. Okay, yes, there are weaknesses in this script in terms of the truth of who we are culturally, and it's always been my modus operandi, I guess, to try to see what I could bring in that might bring more understanding. Because, you know, you have to be able to work with people, you know, and if I'm working with people who do want to get a little taste of the truth or get a taste of something they hadn't understood before in terms of our own culture, and it sort of made me I had to learn more,
Right.
Because we're coming back through genocide. That's a real thing. And so you have to dig around and get to the truth of the information, and certainly wasn't necessarily in the books. I mean, I quit reading in school because of when I would get interested in a story or a character, I'd always end up getting slammed because of the way our people were portrayed in history books
Yeah.
or novels or any of it.
But you were acting in the 70s and 80s. I mean,
Yeah.
with all respect,
70 and 71.
these were not necessarily nuanced times in the depiction of Indigenous people. I mean, I don't mean to chuckle, but they definitely weren't. Were there times where you said, "No, I can't do this. I can't be part of this"?
Well, there was one show. This was in L.A.,
Yeah.
and that was probably, let's see, about around late 80s, actually.
So not that long ago.
Not that long ago, and it was one of your big Hollywood guys who's been producing movies for decades before. And I kept on trying because I thought, well, these are good people. If I can get them to see something that's sort of a misappropriation or misunderstanding, then you know, if I can get one little idea in, that'll be good. So I really tried to get that audition. I just tried, and my body was just hating it. I was trying and trying and trying just to get in the room to say that this is not true, that women are not warriors. That's so not true. And
That was the line. The line was,
that was the idea.
women are not warriors.
Women are not warriors.
Right.
And, you know, I'm telling somebody that women are not warriors. And so I just wanted to be able to say, this is so not true. And, God, and they called me in the room and I said, I just haven't
do
been
it.
able to digest this. And because you know, this is not true, that women are not warriors. We are warriors. And he said, well, if you can't do it,
Get out.
get out.
Right.
Yep. So
So you got out.
yeah, I got out.
Yeah.
And I was really grateful. And then here was my good friend who I worked with so much, Gordon. And
Gordon
Tatusis. And he was playing with a woman who was not Indigenous. And he said, why isn't Tantoo playing this role?
Right.
And they said, well, she's too tall.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that must be it. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Q. My guest right now is Canadian actor and activist Tantoo Cardinal. She's in 3 films at the Toronto International Film Festival, including Through Black Spruce. She's also getting the Burke's Diamond tribute to this year's Women in Film. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
One of the things I want to talk about is I think we're on the right path here because you've been really active in raising awareness about environmental issues, about issues facing Indigenous people off screen. In 2011, you were arrested in Washington for protesting the Keystone XL pipeline project. I know this is a bit of a broad question, but how do you see a connection between your acting and your activism? Or is there one?
It's all the same thing, you know. We've been attacked on all fronts. Like I say, coming back from genocide, and the thing how genocide works is it absolutely attacks everything about you. When I was visiting in Guatemala, and they were showing us places where communities were absolutely wiped out, genocide is so thorough that they even smashed the pots that they cooked food in. And so, and that reflects back to our people being starved on the plains and the buffalo being slaughtered and our kids being starved to death in residential schools and being fed wormy stuff. I mean, it's just too much.
Yeah.
And I just really wanted to find out what was it that I could contribute. People had education, they had skills, and they had knowledge of some sort. I had nothing. Barely made it through high school. So I wanted to see, I heard a voice in my head saying everyone's been given a gift. So I just started volunteering here and there and everywhere as anything that popped up in front of me.
Just helping out.
So, just in front of me to see what it is that I was any good at.
And you're acting at this.
So I got an opportunity to act.
That's a big one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it felt like a duck to water.
Did something click? Yeah.
Absolutely. And not only that, I was wearing a dress that the wonderful Vicky Crowchild had donated to the project. It was a docudrama about Father Lacombe, and Father Lacombe is a whole nother issue. But I was there to do the best job of acting that I possibly could so I would get more opportunities to kind of be involved with stories and to try to change some of those stories. And so Vicky Crowchild had lent this 150-year-old dress to the production company. It was just full of beads. And
beautiful.
It was, oh, my God, I put it on and it just felt perfect. And then I found out later that my great-grandfather had left Big Bear's tribe, and somewhere along the line he wound up in Sarcee country, which is where Vicky Crowchild is from, and she knew the story of my great-grandfather. And he had to split in the middle of the night because the RCMP got wind that a renegade was in the camp. That was an Indian off the reservation. He's supposed to be locked up on the reservation, and he said, I can't do that. And so they found him in Sarcee camp. He had to leave in the middle of the night. So that's how my family wound up in Dene country.
Right. And then this dress presents itself to you.
Yes, and to me, I thought, my great-grandfather's seen this dress.
Right.
Maybe he's pulled a few tabs on this dress. Who knows?
So when you got arrested, what was going through your mind when you got arrested down in Washington?
It was, this is the truth that I have been wanting to see. The truth that we have a relationship with the earth. Even though our traditions were gone and invisible to me, I didn't know anything about our traditions. I had a relationship with the wind, the birds, the earth, all of this kind of stuff. And it made me crazy, actually, to see what was done to my homeland. And I don't believe in violence. So there were different movements that were going on that I could not be involved in because there was violence there.
Yeah.
And not that I'm scared of violence.
No, but you said
I don't believe in it.
Yeah.
So when this idea came along to stand up and say something
Right.
about the land, about the pipelines, about this way of life that's absolutely accepted by this society. People are kind of brainwashed into believing that only oil and gas is the only way we're going to be able to live, and uranium and all of that kind of stuff. Before that, it was whale oil till they were wiping out the whales. And before that, what? And now we have solar energy and wind energy. We don't have excuses. Yeah, that's money talking. that's going on right now. People just crying and wailing over that money that they're afraid is going to go. And I think we have a responsibility to sacrifice for the future generations. And if we're not willing to do that ourselves, what are we saying to the future generations? That's okay. You can wake up with a red sun and a heavy cough and hunt for water to be your first thing of the day. And that's okay, as long as we're comfortable right now, you know? And so when Margie called me, actually.
Who?
Margie Kidder.
Oh.
Yeah, because she and I were
late.
arrested. The late Margie Kidder, dear friend. And she called me and she said, let's go get arrested.
I don't mean to laugh. That's a good line.
Yeah, come on, we got to go get arrested. She said, I got flight points. I'll get you a ticket. She did. She got me a ticket to fly over there, and we stayed at her friend's place, and we went in there and got arrested. And did you know that there was an earthquake when we were just getting released out of jail? And somebody else said, lightning strike the blah, blah, blah cathedral. And you know, in our stories, our prophetic stories, they talk about these times and what's to come. So it's all in keeping with all those stories. And I think society is really going to have to see the power of natural force.
Well, while I got you, I want to say congratulations on being a member of the Oscars Academy, by the way.
Thank you.
That's a big one. Mm-hmm. But I want to ask you a question as a Oscars Academy member. Is that cool with you?
Yep.
So one thing we're talking a lot about in this show, and one thing that I think everyone is talking about, is the idea of the inclusion rider. Now, if you're listening to this, these are clauses that actors write into their contracts requiring that a film's casting be more representative, including 50% women and 40% people of color. How do you think that's going to do? How do you think that's going to work in making films more inclusive?
Really depends on the producers.
Yeah, it's a good first step.
I would think so, at least to bring the idea forward. We're doing that, you know, in the films that I'm in, and all across Indian country. I think that's going on, moving in that direction.
Does it feel like we're moving in a good direction to you?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of changes in 40, 50 years. There's been a lot of changes, and there's been new awareness, and our stories are getting more complex. At least we're being stories. Why is it taking it so long for me to be a number one on a feature script? Is because our stories are second class. We're second rate. Right. You know, my career has been built on kind of being there for the main story that's going on, and very rarely has it been my character's story.
What is that like for you then as an actor? What is it like? How does that feel kind of deep within when you're not number one on the sheet every single time?
Ooh, really depends on the situation. It's been a hard. It's so hard. It just hurts my heart how we're not seen. There's so many interesting stories from our world, and to be completely, you know, it's much better now. Now I'll find somebody in production who will be able to hear my voice. But in the beginning, it was like, oh, is that a noisy Indian I hear? You know?
Right.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So on that level, there's been enormous change.
So where do you hope we go from here? I mean, we talked earlier about the excitement of the film festival in Toronto. We're talking a little bit now about how exciting it is that so many Indigenous stories are finally being told. But as we both know, I think I'm allowed to say this, we're just barely scratching the surface here.
Yeah.
So where do you hope we're going 15, 20 years from now?
Oh, God, I sincerely hope that we get a true relationship with Earth. Our survival really depends on it. And our children really need us to understand what that is. And to, in Indian country, we talk about decolonizing ourselves. And that means going back to our matrilineal civilization and to those things that were wiped away, because those things that were wiped away were the most precious and the most important. And those are the things that we have to bring back. And I think that the rest of this society has to do that in terms of everyone has had a relationship with Earth. You know, to try to listen. Is there a song there? Is there a story there?
Yeah.
Is there some place that I am kind of feeling or hearing? Find your elders. Find the ones who know something about those old ways, even if it's your grandma who had certain recipes. I don't know how you do that.
Yeah.
Us, we had to fight to take our bundle back.
Right.
And I think everyone has a responsibility to do that.
But you had to fight. I was reading the interview of the Tina Keeper, who's the incredible actor, former member of the House of Commons, was in his part of the Through Black Spruce film. In her
Producer.
In her interview with you, she said, I never really thought I could do any of this until I saw Tantoo Cardinal do it. So 15, 20 years from now, what are you hoping it looks like for Indigenous people in film, knowing that you had that impact on so many people?
Oh, man. Skilled performers, skilled writers, skilled directors, producers, and a real feeling of belonging in the world of stories. There's so many stories that not only for us and for our own children and our own cultures, but for everybody. So much has been missed out in the maligning of Indigenous people for the purposes of getting power and control over the land. And I really hope that we can hear each other and respect each other.
It's been so nice talking to you.
You do.
Congratulations on everything, by the way.
Thank you.
And come back sometime, will you?